Hello, hello, hello. So I am going to dive in with a little question from Kat, who has asked, how do you fuel your runs as a beginner? How to eat before a run as a beginner? She says that she is down to coffee and a banana, and it's all that she can eat without getting a stitch. And she runs first thing on the morning, anything between 5 and 15k. And breakfast was getting too much. She tried toast, tried other breakfast combos, but basically can't eat anything other than an energy bar or banana before a run without getting a stitch. She thought it was just her. It isn't. It's really common. And she also wants to push for longer runs, but wants to get this bit right first. So we all have very different things in terms of how our gastric systems work and what we can and can't tolerate in terms of not getting gastric discomfort when running. And yes, this is one of these where it depends, but equally it's one that we can explore a number of options on. Now, training on a banana and coffee actually is okay. Between 5 and 15k is fine. You're taking in some carbohydrate, you are having a brew, you are going to feel that you are able to do the work that you want to do, and that's okay. That's totally fine. The first thing that you can look at in terms of, how you set out your nutrition before you go out for training is time periods. So if you are going out on a morning and you're having your breakfast and then you're going straight out for a run, then your body may react differently to if you are eating and then leaving it for a little while before training. Now, we all have different thresholds of how long we need between meals before we can train and what that looks like for us. Now, I've trained my body now that it can go out quite happily, certainly after breakfast, within about 45 minutes. And within an evening meal, if I'm going to train on evening, I can probably run an hour to an hour and a half after an evening meal. And that's just been by, looking at trying it, giving it a go, and you're sort of decreasing that time a little bit at a time. So it might be that what you start by doing is experimenting with having your breakfast and then waiting an hour and a half before you go out and train. See how that feels. Then you might want to bring that back a little bit, and you might then want to bring it back by 5 minutes, and see where your level is. But there is nothing wrong with training on a banana and a cuppa. There's nothing wrong with that, or an energy bar and a cuppa. In terms of, I suppose the trendy thing has been fasted training, and whether or not we should be including fasted training into our schedules, because that helps us to metabolize fat better, yada, 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 yada. Now, there is evidence linked to the fact that fasted training certainly is involved in our systems to ultimately mean that we can utilize more energy within our muscles. And training fasted has been shown to improve insulin sensitivity and other things along those lines. Now, fasted training, or just going out to train before you've had your breakfast, we don't need to make it all fancy, Dan, can enable your body to work with different processes. And that doesn't mean that that's the only way to do that. So as an endurance athlete, as somebody who is looking at the endurance spectrum of performance, you are going to be asking your body to use all sorts of energy systems in order to fuel your training. So you're going to do some training that's harder, whether that is going up a hill, whether that is going a little bit faster. So we're looking at the intensity of our training is going to change throughout each run. It's going to change throughout each session. It's going to change throughout each week. So as we look to our training, we're actually allowing those systems to become very good at their job. So as an endurance athlete, you will be training your system already to utilize fat for fuel, because you are going out for longer periods of time and you are probably depleting your glycogen stores in your muscles in any event. So that is the training that is already happening in your body. Now, fasted training has no benefit at all to you if it compromises the session that you're going to do. You're better off getting the quality session than the effect of being fasted. So if you are looking at doing fasted training and you end up lethargic and the session's just generally crap, and you get home thinking, well, there was actually no point in that session, then, you just ticking the box in terms of the fact that it was metabolizing fat storage for you isn't really a thing, because you can get that ability for your body to switch between your different energy systems naturally through your training. As an endurance athlete, you will be doing that naturally. So when we look at what we're going to eat and how we're going to eat, then we have to look at, number one, the comfort factor. So if you are uncomfortable eating close to running and it creates gastric issues, whether that's a stitch, whether that's a need in the loo, whether that's just general feeling lethargic and full, and whether it makes you burp and your food repeats on you, and all of these gorgeous things that can happen to runners, your comfort is paramount in terms of how you are fueling your run on a morning. And then it's looking at how you feel in terms of energy and what energy you have. Now, the things that we can manipulate here are, number one, the types of food. So you might be looking at foods that you can digest. You're obviously going to be looking at foods that you can digest. So Kat said that she can digest a banana. So maybe she could try then creating some banana pancakes, or she could give a try to some banana porridge. And even a small quantity might feel incredibly different. Now, when I'm going to go out for a long run on a morning, I tend to use those so simple porridges that are you stick this much milk in and you put it all in and you put it in the microwave for 2 minutes, because it's not a huge portion and it sits really nicely on my stomach, and I can run fairly quickly after consuming that particular makeup of food. Calorific intake is fairly low from it. You're talking about around the 200 calorie mark as in terms of intake, but for my body it feels enough fuel to take on then a morning training session, and I can then feel ready for the work that I'm going to do. And as long as you're looking at your diet across the days, the weeks, the months, and I use diet in terms of your nutrition, your fueling strategy, then you're not going to rise and fall on one particular meal. Now, if you've eaten well the night before, you're going to have decent glycogen stores in the morning. You haven't used up all of the energy in those muscles while you've been asleep, and you are going to be okay to train fasted or before breakfast. If you are going to if you feel more comfortable having pre-fueled, which I do feel more comfortable having pre-fueled, then we can make sure that we are looking to achieve something that works for us. So porridge, bagels, toast, pancakes, things like that we can bring together. Now, it doesn't even have to be traditional breakfast food. You might want it to be carbohydrate based to make sure that your glycogen stores are tip top if you're going to run for over an hour. Anything under an hour, you don't really need to be too fussy around, because you are designed to have enough fuel to do that. Your body is already designed to be able to take that and do that. In terms of the comfort factor is the predominant one. Then we can manipulate the timing of the meal. So how does it work for you? It might be that you've tried to eat something and then tried to go straight out and train, and that gave you gastric upset. Now, what would it be like if you left training for 45 minutes, an hour and a half? How would that look in terms of your feeling of comfort within that post-fueling exercise. So we can start to manipulate the time between eating and training and how that can work in terms of how our stomach reacts to what we're putting in. And like I said, you can try it, if you generally run on a morning, you could try it with a snack on an afternoon and do an afternoon run. So you could have a snack mid-afternoon and you could say, right, I'm going to run before my evening meal. And you could start using it at that time of day so that when it comes to morning, you can transfer what you've learned from that strategy later in the day into your morning runs. You can start to look at, okay, so I managed to have this, this, and this before I went out for my afternoon evening run, and I felt okay, or I felt not so good, or, let's look at the time that's involved. And with all things around fueling and nutrition, everybody says it's really unique for you, but the considerations are comfort as paramount. Things that we can manipulate are food types. So for a lot of people, moving away from fibrous food before you run is really important. So otherwise you can get the shits. And being mindful of the carbohydrate intake that you're taking at that point. So, it might be that it is really bland food that you want to eat to run on, but equally, that's okay. That's absolutely fine. And then we've got timing of meal prior to the session and how we actually use that timing so that gastric emptying is taking place at the optimal, so that our own personal system can deal with whether it's a stitch that you get, whether you're a burper, whether you're just a general discomfort feeling, whether you feel sick, whether you feel bloated, whatever it is that comes up for you in terms of gastric discomfort, that we're looking at how that timeline works. So yes, it's trial and error, but those are the three things that you need to look at. You're not going wrong right now. You're not doing the wrong thing, because you are right now, you're taking in a level of carbohydrate, you're taking in something that creates comfort for you. Right now, you must have the timings right on that. And for between 5 and 15K, that's okay. And you don't necessarily even need to look at additional fueling for that. If you want to start to run longer, then that might be looking at learning and teaching your body to take on fuel whilst you run. And I'm going to do completely separate videos about that and how, I train my body in terms of running ultras to be able to eat different things and be able to take on food as I run. And I tend to eat real food, as in things that you chew and swallow, rather than a copious amount of gels, whilst I do use an element of gel intake. I tend to eat food when I am fueling within training or within a race setting. So we'll talk about that one separately, and that might be the consideration as you go longer. But where you are right now, you're not messing up, you're not getting it wrong. In terms of getting home and wanting to eat all of the things, which was the second part of Kat's question, it's okay to come home hungry. Some runners come home like the ravenous beast. Some runners can't eat after they've run, despite the fact that they know that they've burnt a load of calories and that they should be hungry. They actually don't feel hungry. And again, I'm going to do a separate video on what you can do around that. Remembering that, you are refueling and restocking at that point. Your run isn't just about you then going, well, I've ran, so I'm just going to eat all of the things and I'm going to just bring in another 4,000 calories quickly because I've earned it or because I've got that tick in the box. So we're thinking about rehydrating at that point, because often hunger appears in disguise, and it actually isn't hunger, it's actually you're thirsty. So rehydration is really important, and it might be that before you go out for your run that you put a bottle of water in the fridge so it's nice and cool when you get home, so that it's ready, or you leave it on the side so that you know where it is and you can get straight into your rehydration strategy. Then we're looking at bringing in some replacement and replenishment for what we've burnt off, so that we can optimize recovery and be ready for the next session. For a lot of people, chocolate milk is really optimal. It's got a really good breakdown between protein and carbohydrates that will help you to refuel. It might be a sports bar of some description, but we can look at what that post-nutrition looks like too, and how we can look at ensuring that we're not just ravenous beastly eating all the things, but that we're also not neglecting pre-run, post-run nutrition and replenishment and refueling to aid and support our recovery so that we can go out and do this stuff again. So I hope that you found that super useful. I'd love to know your thoughts and your comments in the comments section below. If you haven't already, make sure that you do subscribe to the channel, because I would absolutely love you to be around, and hit that bell so that you get notifications when the next video is uploaded. In the meantime, have a cracking day. Bye.